Rabbi Sai, this is a short daf today.
Oh, that's good.
We're on daf Chaf Aleph Amud Aleph. We did the Mishnah yesterday, where we saw that there are three different geographic locations which have separate. Each one has separate halachos, and there's a machlokes between Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Yossi about those three different places. The three places are Eretz Yisrael, Syria, and Chutz La'aretz, the land of Israel proper, the annexed portion of Eretz Yisrael that David HaMelech conquered, and complete Chutz La'aretz. All of these halachas are pertaining to the issue of selling real estate to an akum. And there are two types of real estate that the Mishnah distinguishes between. One is structures and the other one is the agricultural fields for planting. So the way that the breakdown works, just to review what we saw yesterday, is that according to Rabbi Meir, first we do the opinion of Rabbi Meir, we know that there's an Isser D'Oraisa according to everyone to sell karka to an akum in Eretz Yisrael, right? Because of the Isser of Lo Sechanim. So we know that everyone will agree that you cannot sell karka. The question is, how far did the Chachamim come in, and were they gozer to create a fence around that? And so this is the machlokus between Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Yossi. Rabbi Meir says, not only is there an Isser D'Oraisa of selling, but you're not allowed to lease houses and fields to an akum in Eretz Yisrael. In other words, houses, no, and for sure not fields, because fields are even more problematic, as we discussed briefly, as we'll review again today. Next category is Syria, the annexed portion. So we're a little bit more lenient, and we allow you to lease houses, but you cannot lease fields. So selling for sure is out, because it's still part of Eretz Yisrael, but we'll go easy on you and let you lease a house, but we will not allow you to lease a field. And in Chutz La'aretz, we will allow you to sell houses because you're totally outside of Eretz Yisrael. So for sure, there's no Isser D'Oraisa anymore. So you can sell houses, but you cannot sell fields. You can only lease fields. That's according to Rabbi Meir. Rabbi Yossi says, let's take it down a notch and we'll be more lenient. And he says like this: in Eretz Yisrael, we know for sure you can't sell any property, but we'll let you lease houses, and the only thing that will prohibit leasing are fields. Syria will let you even sell houses, because apparently Syria, according to Rabbi Yossi, does not have the status fully of Eretz Yisrael, and will only allow you to lease fields. You're not allowed to sell fields, you can only lease fields. And in Chutz La'aretz, Rabbi Yossi says everything is fine, you can sell and lease. So now let's take a look. Let's take a look at our Gemara. Mai ein tzarech lomar sados. Why is it that the Mishnah assumes that agricultural fields are more problematic than houses, or structures? Why is it more problematic to sell fields than houses? So ilay mimishum de isba tarti chada chanias karka v'chada de kamafkale mimaiser. So the Gemara says, if you'll say what we explained yesterday, which is that there's two violations if you sell real estate that's a field in Eretz Yisrael to an akum. Number one is that you're in violation of the Isser of Lo Sechanim. But there's a second one, which is number two. You're removing the mitzvah of meiser from the produce that grows on an agricultural field. Because if it's owned by an akum, then it's patur from meiser. So therefore, those are the two things. That's why it's doubly bad to do it, and that's why if the Chachamim are going to be gozer, they're going to be gozer more stringently on fields than they will on houses.
Is there an actual isur to remove it from Aser?
Yes, that's what the Gemara is suggesting.
You can bring into your own home through the window, what have you, and not make Meiser on it.
In Hachinami, although that's the individual produce. But here we're saying that the land itself, to remove the land from its ability to grow tithable produce, is the prohibition. So the Gemara now says, but if that's the argument, so then ihachi batim nami ikatarti chada chanias karka v'chada dekamafkala mimezuzah. The Gemara says, well, I have a problem with that, because if that's the case, then there are also two prohibitions with selling any structure, because if it's a residential structure, then it has to have a mezuzah. and so you're violation of lo sichanem. Plus, by selling it to an akum, you're removing the obligation to put a mezuzah on the door. So isn't that also the same kind of problem as removing something from tithable produce?
You're taking food from the kohen's mouth. The other one, you're taking a mezuzah from God.
It's an interesting point. Is the concern because you're depriving kohanim from their produce? That doesn't seem to be the premise of the Gemara.
That's how I would distinguish it.
Yeah, right. No, so it's here the Gemara is saying, you're right. I hear the distinction that you're making, but the Gemara's argument seems to be that it's an issue of kedusha. Like you're removing the kedusha from the soil, like you're removing the kedusha from the house. So Amar of Misharshia mezuzah chovas adarhu. So the Gemara's answer, I like Shlomi's answer, but that's not what the Gemara answers. The Gemara answers that there's no obligation for a house to have a mezuzah. There's an obligation for a residing person, a resident, to put up a mezuzah wherever he resides. But if there's a house and there's no one living in there, even if it's owned by a Jew, there's no chiyuv of mezuzah. So therefore, but that's different from produce. Produce, the fact that it's tithable, is an indication that there's an inherent kedusha in that produce. So that's the problem that you're creating, is that you're reducing the kedusha from the soil by selling it to an akum, and therefore it won't grow tithable produce. That's the difference. And that's the reason why there's no isser of selling a house to an akum vis-a-vis the law of mezuzah. Next, B'Surya maskirin batim v'chulei. So what did Rabbi Meir say? That in Syria, you can't sell houses, but you can rent houses, and you're not allowed to even rent fields. So ma'ishna mechira delo mishum mechira de'eretz Yisrael. So why is it that you're not allowed to sell houses in Syria? Because the Gemara's initial thinking is that Syria does not have the kedusha of Eretz Yisrael. And the reason why the rabbis came along and banned selling property in Syria is lest you come to do the same in Eretz Yisrael. So ihachi misechiris nami nigzor. So the Gemara says, well, if that's the case, why don't we then ban leasing houses in Syria? You know, if we're concerned that you're going to do the same thing in Eretz Yisrael, so then we should ban anything that's prohibited in Eretz Yisrael. So leasing houses is also prohibited. So the Gemara answers, Hi gufa gezera, va'ano nekom v'nigzor gezera l'gezera. So the Gemara says, but that's a double gezera. Because the whole reason why you're not allowed to lease houses in Eretz Yisrael is so lest you come to sell. So then we're piggybacking an additional gezerah on top of that we don't do. So the Gemara says, now wait a minute. But wait a minute, I'll show you a gezerah l'gezerah in Syria. We don't allow you to lease a farmland, fields in Syria. Why isn't that a gezerah l'gezerah, a gezerah on top of another gezerah? So the Gemara says, you know what, you're right. Our premise was mistaken. Hasam lav gezerahu ksavar kivush yachid shmei kivush, sada di is tarti gazru bei rabbanan, batim deles behu tarti lo gazru behu rabbanan. So the Gemara says, guess what? According to Rabbi Meir, Syria does have the status of Kedushas Eretz Yisrael, because whatever David HaMelech annexed gains the Kedusha of Eretz Yisrael vis-a-vis the laws of the prohibition of selling to an akum and vis-a-vis the laws of Meiser. And so it works like this. There's an Isser Deoraisa of selling land in Syria to an akum because that is Kedushas Haaretz. So the rabbis said, here's what we're going to do. We're going to ban only the leasing of fields, but not the leasing of houses. Because leasing of houses is not usher, only selling. And since it's not Eretz Yisrael proper, we're not going to be as machmir as we are in Eretz Yisrael. But because fields have two prohibitions if it was to be sold to an akum, namely lo sechanem plus being mafkia from Meiser, therefore we're going to ban even leasing in Syria. Let's go further. B'chutz la'aretz v'chulei, and then Reb Meir Shita is...
back to that first thing we said with the two prohibitions.
Yeah.
So that's why they're doing that.
That's why there's a distinction between batim and sados in Syria. Okay. B'chutz la'aretz v'chulei, if you're outside of Eretz Yisrael, so what did Rabbi Meir say? He said that you're allowed to sell houses, but you're only allowed to lease fields. So sada de isbe tarti gazru buhu rabbanan, batim deles buhu tarti lo gazru buhu rabbanan. Clearly, it's permitted to sell property in chutz laretz. Why were the chachamim more machmir by sados than they are by batim? Because batim, you're so far away from Eretz Yisrael, they didn't see any reason to be gozer. But by sados, because there's two potential prohibitions were you to do the same activity in Eretz Yisrael, the rabbis clamped down even in chutz laretz.
Because they're waiting for the return.
Well, the question is, you're going to move to Eretz Yisrael, you'll make aliyah, and you'll remember what you used to do in Chutz La'aretz. That's exactly the point. Rabbi Yossi Omer be'Eretz Yisrael maskirin lahem batim v'chulis. Now let's go to Rabbi Yossi Shita. He says, take it down one notch in stringency. So my time, so the isbahu tarti gazru buhu rabbanan, batim d'lesbahu tarti lo gazru buhu rabbanan. He says that in Eretz Yisrael itself, you're allowed to lease houses. You just can't lease fields. And the reason is again, because by houses there's only one Isser D'Oraisa of selling, so therefore the Chachamim weren't gozer at all. But where there's two Isser D'Oraisas of selling, Chazal were gozer on fields that you can't even lease. Uvesurya mochrin v'chulei, and in Syria, not only are you allowed to lease, but you're even allowed to sell houses. The only limitation is on fields, according to Rabbi Yossi. Now, wait a minute, this is problematic, because if Surya has the status of Kedusha Sa'aretz, how could Rabbi Yossi permit you to sell a house? My time, aksaver kivush yachid lo shmei kivush, v'sada di isba tarti gazru barabanan, batim lesbu tarti lo gazru barabanan. So the answer is that Rabbi Yossi disagrees with Reb Meir regarding the annexed status of Surya. He says that because David was an individual king, and there was no commandment by Hashem to conquer it, it doesn't have the status of Kedushas Eretz Yisrael. And if that's the case, then there's no reason for us to prohibit selling houses. It doesn't have Kedushas Eretz. The reason why we prohibit selling fields is because since it's close to Eretz Yisrael and there's two prohibitions attached to it, so the rabbis clamp down.
So he holds it's like chutz laretz.
He holds it's the same thing as chutz laretz, but because it's close to Eretz Yisrael, we have to be machmir at least for a field which has two isurim attached to it. But in chutz la'aretz, he says you can sell both outright.
So
my taima kaven demerchak lo gazrinan. What's the reason? Because since it's so far from Eretz Yisrael, there's no reason to be gozer at all. So that's why Rabbi Yossi is completely lenient when it comes to houses in chutz la'aretz and in fields in chutz la'aretz. Now, Amar Rav Yehuda, Amar Shmuel, halacha ka Rabbi Yossi. They say that we paskin, like Rabbi Yossi, you could be more lenient. So in Eretz Yisrael, you can lease houses, but not fields. In Surya, you can sell houses and you can lease fields. And in Chutz La'aretz, you can sell both. Amar Rav Yosef, u'vavad shelo ya'asena shchuna. So that halacha that you're allowed to sell houses is provided, both in Surya and in Chutz La'aretz, is provided that you don't make a neighborhood of akums. So, and why is that? Because you don't want to promote a large pocket it's like there goes the neighborhood. You're promoting the potential for a damaging unit of people within a community where Jews live.
Even in Chutz La'aretz.
Even in Chutz La'aretz. So it's like if you're a land developer, if you're a builder, in Canada, and you know that there's definitively idolaters that want to move into your neighborhood, and you're selling tract homes, it's going to be a problem according to this.
Open up a temple, whatever. You can't do it.
Right. V'kama shchuna, and how much is a neighborhood? So Tana ein shchuna pchusa mishlosha b'nei adam. Not less than 3 people. So wait a minute. So that means that if I have 3 houses for sale adjacent to each other, and I know that 3 idolaters want to buy them, I'm not allowed to sell them. So the Gemara says, okay, fine, but wait a minute. But if you're concerned about creating a shchuna, a neighborhood of akums, then why aren't you worried that maybe one Jew will sell to one akum, and then a second Jew will sell to 2 other akums, and they'll collectively create a neighborhood? Why is it only usher for one person to sell to 3? So Abaya Omar alifnei mefakdinan alifnei delifnei lo mefakdinan. Tosfos says the language is not precise. What it means is we're not gozer that far. We're only gozer on one individual Jew, not to sell to 3 separate akums. But if an individual Jew sells to one and the other guy sells to two, it's fine, even if it ultimately a shchuna is created. What's
You
that?
don't have a problem with the third Jew who comes along and serves.
No, there isn't any problem. Af b'makom sha'amru lahaskir,
Take it around.
and then we said in the Mishnah as follows: even when we said that it's permissible to rent a house, there are places where you're permitted to rent a house to an akum. However, you're not allowed to rent him a house where he himself is going to reside. Why? Because he's going to bring his avodah zara into there. And even though you don't have control over that house, since your name is on the title, the Torah says, "L'savi soeva el beisecha," do not bring an abomination into your home. Michlal de'ika duchta delo mogri. So the Gemara says this language that in a place where they allow you to rent implies that there are places where you're not allowed to rent. Ustama karebi meir, the Rabbi Yossi b'chol duchta mogri. He says, you see from here that when Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi was redacting the Mishnah, he took sides, and he sided with Rabbi Meir. Normally, the fallback position is always Rabbi Meir. How do I know that? Because according to Rabbi Yossi, everywhere, even in Eretz Yisrael, you're allowed to rent houses to an akum. So the fact that the language of the Mishnah at this point is that in a place where you're allowed to rent, which implies that there are some places that you're not allowed to rent, must go according to Rabbi Meir, not Rabbi Yossi, because according to Rabbi Yossi, you can rent everywhere to an akum. It's only according to Rabbi Meir that you're not allowed to rent houses in Eretz Yisrael.
So when they said shchuna, they meant a business shchuna?
No. One second. You're going back to the shchuna issue.
Yeah, well, if you can't sell it for dira,
Yes.
what's the shchuna?
So to create either that the akum will allow. So the issue of so I see what you're saying. So when we're talking about a shchuna, so we said that you're not allowed to sell it to an akum. So yeah, a shchuna, and even an industrial shchuna is going to create problems, because the whole issue, the whole concern is that giving a foothold to a group of akums could create political unrest for the Jews that are living in the area. So even doing it where it's not residential could be a problem. Let's say they have 3 buildings where they do business, right? That could potentially be a problem. It could create civil unrest. Okay. Uvechol makom lo yiskar v'chuli. Then the Mishnah had said that you're never allowed to, whether it's in Eretz Yisrael or in Chutz La'aretz, never lease out a bathhouse to an akum. And the reason is because, let's say it says Bernstein's bathhouse on the front of the bathhouse, right? The problem is that he's going to heat up the water on Shabbos because he's got a controlling interest. And even though it's within his rights because he's the controlling person of that bathhouse, but it's Marasayan. People will think that the Jew is a Mechalel Shabbos because he's heating up water, but they don't realize that it really belongs to the Goy now. So Tanya Reb Shimon Gamliel Omer Lo Yiskar Adam Erchotza Lo Ave Kochavim Ibnei Shenikra Al Shemo. That's exactly what the Brisa says from Reb Shimon Gamliel. Va'ovi Kochavim Zeh Osa B'Malacha B'Shabbasus V'Yamim Tovim. And the Goy is going to end up doing Malacha, and it's Marasayan. People will think that the Jews Mechalel Shabbos. Aval Lakusi Mai Shari. So what's the inference? Only to an akum you're not allowed to lease out the bathhouse, but to a kusi, who, according to at this time that the Mishnah is being written, he's like a Yisrael Mumar, which means that he keeps the big things, he's like Shabbos, but he's not careful about the small things. So he keeps Shabbos. You're allowed to sell him because he's not going to be Machalol Shabbos. But wait a minute, Amar Avid Bei Malacha B'Cholol Shel Moed. But what about the fact that Kusim are not careful about the laws of Chol HaMoed? And they do Malacha on Chol HaMoed. So if people will see the water being heated up on Chol HaMoed, isn't that a problem? Even for a Kusi? The Gemara says no. B'Cholol Shel Moed Ananami Avdina. Because on Chol HaMoed, we're also allowed to heat up the water because it's Litzarech HaMoed. That's why you're allowed to do Malach on Chol HaMoed if it's Litzarech HaMoed for the needs of the Yontif. So if people want to take a hot bath during Chol HaMoed, Kol HaKavod. So therefore, there's no Marasayan there. So Aval Sadeu Lo'obikol Chavimai Shari. So really, says the Gemara, so let's make a different inference. The inference that we can make is that I'm not allowed to lease a bathhouse to an akum, But it sounds like I'm allowed to lease other properties to an akum, such as what? Such as a field, an agricultural field. I can lease that to an akum. So my taima, arisa risuse ka'avid. What's the reason? Because people will assume if they see an akum working on Bernstein's field on Shabbos, they'll say, oh, the goy is simply an aris, he's a sharecropper. And he's working on his portion of the field. So he's not working for the Jew, he's working for himself. The Gemara says, but wait a minute, mer chatznami amri arisa arisuse ka'avid. But why don't you say that they'll assume the same thing by Bernstein's bathhouse? So the Gemara answers, arisa demer chatzlo avdi inshi. The answer is that people typically do not have that kind of sharecropping partnership on a bathhouse. They only do it on agricultural land. They don't do it on bathhouses. That's typically not done. So if people see a goy heating up the water on Shabbos, they'll think he's working for Bernstein and there's Chilul Shabbos. I just want to point out that these halachas have tremendous pertinence and relevance to halacha l'maisa today. As far as a Jew having a business open on Shabbos, there are ways for a Jew to have a business open on Shabbos if he has a Gentile partner. And he creates a partnership whereby the Gentile is the owner of the business on Shabbos. We do this kind of agreement all the time. We do this kind of agreement where we make up a contract where a business needs to be open for the survival of the business. It needs to remain open on Shabbos. We will, under certain circumstances, allow the business to stay open on Shabbos. But it has to be owned by a goy, and the goy has to be a real legitimate partner contractually that he owns the business for Shabbos. Now, the other proviso is, let me just finish. The other proviso is that it cannot be bifarhesia. And this is the long Tosfos discussion over here, which there's a much longer halachic discussion. And that is, if the business is operating in view of the Jewish community, then even with the Gentile partnership, it's not going to be permitted. Because of the Maris Ayin, that if people see that it's Bernstein's business that is open on Shabbos, even with getting a Gentile partner involved, they will not. It's not allowed because of the Maris Ayin factor. So you see, this has very important applications, and because the halachas are complicated, you have to ask a shayla. I'll take quick questions. Go ahead.
The language here is back and forth. In my Gemara, it says goy. I guess in your edition, the Gemara says akum. Now, but it's got to be talking about a goy in general.
Correct.
But not necessarily.
The context of avodah zara switches depending on the halacha that we're dealing with.
Yeah. Well, I understand that. What I'm saying is that this whole inyan about the problems, bringing the avodah zara into the house, that's one thing. But working on Shabbos
has no bearing on whether he's an ovid avodah zara or not.
He could be a
100%. 100%. The assumption that Chazal are making is that, like the Yiddish song, oy, 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 a shikar is a goy.
Yeah.
In other words, every goy is an akum in the times of the Gemara. They don't know of such a thing as a non-akum goy, unless he's a ger toshav. Right? But as far as the halachas of Shabbos, even if he's a ger toshav, it doesn't make a difference.
Because for the Meiri,
I understand.
No.
I understand.
Say the Meiri would have no problem with this language because here Goy is talking about Shabbos and all those things.
Yeah.
So even he who recognizes them as not being akum would still say this is the
this halacha would still pertain to whether you're avodah avodah zara or not, Mr. Friedman.
No, the schiras, when they one part takes one part of the schiras. On Shabbos, in one part of there's also the problem of both what and how it's being done.
Correct. Right. You have to write up a shtar very carefully, and it's not. You can't play a game. It has to be done really halacha l'maisa. You have to write up a contract and make sure that it has legal teeth to it as well. And there's a lot to talk about. You have to make sure that the goy actually invests in the business to some degree. There's what to talk about. Tanya. Reb Shimon ben Elazar Omer, Lo yaskir adam sadeu lukusim mipnei shenikreis al shemo. Now we have another brisa that says that even though we've been discussing bathhouses and we say that it's perfectly fine for a kusi to lease a bathhouse from a Jew, but a person may not lease out agricultural land to a kusi, again, because there, if it's Bernstein's field, the kusi might do things that are going to create a desecration of halacha, and people will attribute it back to Bernstein. The kusi zeh osa bo malacha b'chol shel moed, and a kusi will do work on chol hamoed on the field, and that's the problem. And there you can't make the argument that it's l'tzarech hamoed. Why do you need to work the field on chol hamoed? Your grain has to dry out. It's not going to be ready for use on Yantiv. Aval ovi kolchav imai shari. So the Gemara says, but what's the inference? That to an akum, you are allowed to lease the field, like we said before, da'amar arisa arisu seyavid, because people will assume that he's a sharecropper, he's working for himself. Why can't people make the same assumption if it's a kusi? So the Gemara answers, you're right. That's actually not the rationale of Rebbe Elazar. Arisusa Reb Shimon ben Elazar Leslie. So really, Reb Shimon doesn't hold of that rationale, that people will assume he's a sharecropper. So what taka is the real reason? Ela akum my time a mutter damrinon le vitzayis. So the answer is that if I lease my land, my field out to an akum, and I tell him, sir, I will only lease this to you on the condition that you don't work it on Shabbos because of the Marasayin. I don't want people to think that Bernstein's Machalol Shabbos. So the Gemara says that's the reason why Reb Shimon ben Elazar says it's mutter. Well, if that's the argument, kusi namer min levet sayas. Why can't you make the same argument for a kusi? You tell the kusi, I'm leasing you the land on the condition that you don't work it on Shabbos. The Gemara answers no. Kusi lo sayas damar ana gamir natvei minach. So the Gemara says no. The kusi, and we've all seen the psychology before, the kusi says, I know much about halacha as you do. Don't tell me what I can and cannot do. I'm a Jew. It's like if you're going on a business trip and you're going to meet with a company and you say, I have requirements to be kosher and to finish and to get out of the meeting before Shabbos, the goy will jump through hoops. He'll get it triple sealed, quadruple sealed, and he'll do whatever it takes to get you the food and to get you out of there before, and 2 hours before sunset. The Jew, you say, I'm kosher. You'll have a salad. And Shabbos, I work on Shabbos. Don't worry about it. You'll get home when you get home. Okay, so that's the difference between the akum and the kusi. Okay, so the Gemara now says, "Ihachi ma'iri mipnei shenikres al shemo tepok le mishum lifnei ivra lo sitein michshol." So the Gemara says, if the concern is that the kusi is going to work on chol hamoed and he's not going to listen to you, so then why did you tell me that the reason is because of Marasayin, that people are going to say that Bernstein's Machalol Chol HaMoed? There's an even greater concern is where you're enabling a kusi to do chilul halacha, to violate halacha by letting him work on your field. So the Gemara answers, Chada v'od kamer, Chada mishum lifnei iver, v'od mipnei shenikres al shemo. So the Gemara says, Taka, you're right. There are two reasons why you can't lease a field to a kusi. One, because of lifnei iver, you're enabling for him to perform an isser, because if it weren't for your field, he wouldn't have what to work on. And the second reason is because of the Marasayin, because it's going to be attributed back to you. This is where we'll hold it for today. Have a wonderful day.